You spend your time watching celebrities, people who have been in the gym for years, and you want those buttocks that look like they've had surgery, and you complain because you don't have that body. But you don't even make the slightest effort. If you still think that doing hundreds of squats is going to give you big, firm glutes, you've been fooled. Stop wasting your time with mediocre exercises that don't activate your muscles like they should. Science makes it clear, if you don't train strategically, your results will be zero. Today I'm going to reveal to you the 6 foolproof exercises that will sculpt your glutes like never before. If you apply these to the letter, in just 3 weeks you will notice a brutal difference. But be careful, this isn't magic, it's applied science. Are you ready to train the right way? Let's go all out. These exercises are not just anything. I didn't pull them from a random blog or a baseless video. Each one is backed by studies in biomechanics and training physiology. Why? Because to build big, firm glutes, it's not enough to just move, you have to do it the right way. The key lies in 3 essential factors: hypertrophy, strength, and muscle activation. If you only work on strength, you'll fall short. If you only look for volume, but without real activation, you won't see results either. Here we will combine the best of each method for a complete and balanced development. And before I go on, I warn you something. You don't need months to start noticing results. If you apply this with discipline, in just 3 weeks you'll feel the difference in the shape, size, and firmness of your glutes. Don't believe me? Then stick around to the end because I'll give you a complete routine with exact sets, reps, and rests so you don't have to guess at anything. Take advantage of this high-level content. Hit like and subscribe right now, because we only talk about evidence and real results here. Ready to transform your physique? Let's see how your glutes really work. But first I remind you that with these exercises and the accompanying high-quality HSN protein, you'll give your muscles what they need to grow big and strong. I leave you all the promotional links in the description of this video. Take advantage of all the temporary offers they are launching. Now let's get to the explanation. Because before you start training, you need to understand how your glutes really work. They're not just one muscle, but a muscle group made up of 3 key parts: the gluteus maximus, which is the largest and primarily responsible for bulk and strength, the gluteus medius, which gives stability and firmness to the hips, and the gluteus minimus, which aids in mobility and postural control. For these muscles to really grow, it's not enough to just do random exercises. You need to apply 3 fundamental principles. 1. Progressive overload. If you don't gradually increase the intensity of your workout, your glutes will stagnate. More weight, more reps, more tension. That's how you stimulate muscle growth. 2. Full range of motion. If you do half-assed reps, you're just wasting time. Each repetition should go from maximum stretch to full contraction. This way you activate more muscle fibers and achieve real development. 3. Variability in angles and exercises. You can't rely on just one movement. Each exercise activates the glutes in a different way, and combining them strategically is what will give you fast and effective results. Now, let's debunk some myths that continue to ruin results for many people. First, no, you don't need to train glutes every day. More is not always better. The muscle grows during recovery, so training them well about 2 or 3 times a week is more than enough. Second, forget the idea that cardio will give you big glutes. While it does help burn fat and improve your endurance, the real growth comes from resistance and mechanical tension, i.e. lifting weights strategically. Third, having strong glutes is not just a matter of aesthetics. They are essential for posture, stability, and power in almost every movement. If you have lower back pain or weakness in your legs, it may be because your glutes are underdeveloped. If you train smart and apply all of this, you will notice the difference. Now, let's get to the exercises that will really grow your glutes effectively. Let's get started. Exercise number 1. Bulgarian squats. The first exercise we're going to work on is the Bulgarian squat, also known as the Bulgarian split squat. This movement is one of the most effective unilateral variations for developing strength and muscle mass in the lower body, especially the glutes. Unlike a traditional squat, here the work is concentrated on one leg at a time, which not only increases muscle activation, but also improves balance, coordination, and overall body stability. From an anatomical point of view, the Bulgarian squat mainly activates the gluteus maximus, hamstrings, and quadriceps. However, What is most interesting is how the load is distributed on the gluteus when performed correctly. By working unilaterally, you reduce the possibility of dominant muscles such as the quads hogging the effort and force the gluteus to take a leading role. In addition, this exercise generates a great deal of mechanical tension and deep gluteal stretch in the eccentric phase of the movement, which is key to stimulating muscle growth. One of the most important benefits of this exercise is its efficiency. You don't need a large amount of weight to get results, as the simple fact of having to maintain balance and control the movement generates high muscle activation. This makes it a perfect tool for beginners as well as for more advanced people, as it can be easily adapted in difficulty. Correct execution is essential for the gluteus to work as it should. Begin by placing the back foot on a bench or elevated surface, while the front foot is positioned far enough away so that, when descending, the front knee does not exceed the toe of the foot. The back should be kept straight throughout the exercise, but with a slight forward lean of the torso. This tilt, although subtle, significantly increases gluteal activation, as it slightly changes the angle of the movement and favors pushing from the hip rather than from the knee. During the descent, it is important to control the movement, not to drop, and to ensure that the hip descends vertically. The knee should be kept in line with the foot, preventing it from collapsing inward. On the way up, the force should be focused on the heel of the front foot, squeezing the gluteus in the final part of the movement. One of the most common mistakes is not lowering low enough, staying in a comfort zone where the gluteus is barely activated. Another common mistake is to put the back foot down incorrectly, which leads to discomfort, imbalance, and even injury. In addition, many people tend to use barbells instead of dumbbells when they have not yet mastered the movement, which can compromise technique and stability. Therefore, a key recommendation is to start using dumbbells, which allow better control of the movement and reduce the risk of decompensation. A curious fact about this exercise is that, according to electromyographic studies, the Bulgarian squat can generate similar and even higher levels of gluteal activation than the conventional barbell squat, especially when performed with the torso slightly bent over. This means that you don't always need a big load to get big results. Sometimes it's the focus on technique and the right stimulus that really makes the difference. In summary, the Bulgarian squat is a complete, demanding, and highly effective exercise for developing strong, voluminous, and functional glutes. Performed with precision, it is one of the most powerful tools you can include in your routine to completely transform your lower body. Exercise number 2: Gluteal Bridge or hip raises. The second exercise we are going to develop is the gluteal bridge, also known as hip thrust. This movement has established itself in recent years as one of the most effective for the development of the gluteus maximus, both in terms of strength and muscle hypertrophy. Its popularity is no coincidence. The hip thrust allows for a direct and deep activation of the gluteus without other muscle groups, such as the quadriceps or lower back, taking the limelight. From a biomechanical approach, the gluteal bridge is a hip extension exercise. The gluteus maximus is the main muscle responsible for this movement, and in the hip thrust it is allowed to work in isolation and with an optimal range of travel. Unlike exercises such as the squat or deadlift, where the gluteus works throughout the movement but shares the spotlight with other muscles, the hip thrust concentrates the effort almost exclusively on the glutes, especially in the final phase of the movement. In addition to the gluteus maximus, the hamstrings and core are also activated secondarily, as constant stabilization of the pelvis and trunk is required during the exercise. This combination not only helps to improve overall lower body strength, but also to enhance postural control and core stability. One of the most relevant aspects of the hip thrust is its ability to intensely work the upper gluteus. This area, often difficult to develop with other exercises, is especially stimulated by performing a full contraction at the top of the movement. This is where the concept of range of motion, or ROM, comes into play. For the exercise to be effective, it is imperative to bring the hips to full extension, i.e., push up until the body forms a straight line from the shoulders to the knees. At that point, the gluteal contraction should be maximal and sustained, even if only for a second. The correct technique begins by resting the upper back on a bench or elevated surface, making sure that the edge of the bench is just below the shoulder blades. The feet should be hip-width apart, with the soles flat on the floor. From there, start the movement by raising the hips upward by contracting the buttocks, without allowing the lower back to take center stage. It is essential not to hyperextend the back or push with the heels in an explosive way without control. The movement must be firm, but always under muscular control. One of the most common mistakes is not reaching full hip extension. Many people get halfway there and think they are working the gluteus, when in fact they are missing the most effective part of the exercise. Another common mistake is to use excessive weight from the start. In doing so, it is common to lose form and divert effort to other muscles or even joints, decreasing the effectiveness of the movement and increasing the risk of injury. A very useful recommendation to improve the quality of the exercise is to incorporate an elastic band over the knees. This simple tool forces you to maintain constant tension on the gluteus medius throughout the movement, preventing the knees from collapsing inward and enhancing overall gluteal activation. A curious fact about the hip thrust is that its effectiveness has been widely supported by electromyographic studies that place it as one of the exercises with the highest level of gluteus maximus activation, above even the squat or traditional deadlift. This finding has led many coaches and strength specialists to consider it an indispensable element in any routine focused on gluteal development. In conclusion, the glute bridge is not simply a trendy exercise. It is an extremely powerful tool for those looking to improve gluteal strength, shape, and volume. Performed with proper technique, the hip thrust can be the turning point in a workout routine, allowing for real and visible progress in lower body muscle development. Exercise number 3. Abduction Machine. The third exercise we are going to develop is the abduction machine, also known as hip abduction or abductor machine. Although it is often underestimated or used as a light supplement at the end of the workout, the truth is that this exercise plays a fundamental role in the harmonious and complete development of the gluteus, especially with regard to the gluteus medius and gluteus minimus. From an anatomical point of view, these two muscles, the gluteus medius and gluteus minimus, are primarily responsible for hip abduction, i.e. the movement that separates the leg from the central axis of the body. But their role goes far beyond this. These muscles have an essential stabilizing function in the hip and the entire pelvic structure, which makes them key to maintaining posture, lower body alignment, and efficiency in other more complex exercises such as squats, lunges, or deadlifts. When these muscles are strong and well developed, not only is there a functional improvement, but also an aesthetic improvement. They are responsible for giving width, roundness, and firmness to the upper and lateral part of the gluteus, that area that many people seek to develop but often neglect in their workouts. The operation of the machine is simple, but its effectiveness depends entirely on how the movement is executed. Sitting on the machine, with your back supported and your legs placed on the side pads, the goal is to push outward with your knees, spreading your legs apart using the strength of your gluteus medius and gluteus minimus. It seems like a simple movement, but it is easy to be tempted to move the legs by inertia or momentum, which excessively reduces muscle activation. One of the most common mistakes when using this machine is to apply too much weight and make quick, short, uncontrolled movements. In doing so, the body compensates by using muscles that should not be involved or even resorting to trunk thrust. The result is a false sense of intensity that does not translate into effective work. Another common mistake is not keeping the torso stable and allowing the pelvis to move or tilt during the exercise, which also reduces glute-specific work. To maximize the benefit of this exercise, the key is in the control of movement and muscular intention. In other words, it is not just about opening the legs, but about actively feeling how to work the glutes. A very effective technique is to make a small isometric pause at the end of the movement when the legs are completely apart. That pause of 1 or 2 seconds adds sustained muscle tension, which increases fatigue and thus the stimulus for hypertrophy. The quality of the exercise can also be improved by slightly tilting the torso forward during execution. This modification slightly changes the angle of the movement and has been shown to increase gluteus medius activation without the need to increase weight. A curious fact is that, according to several studies, the gluteus medius is one of the muscles that most rapidly loses tone and function in people who lead a sedentary lifestyle. This explains why many people have muscular decompensation or lumbar discomfort, even without training. By regularly including the abduction machine in your training, you not only contribute to the aesthetic development of the gluteus, but also strengthen a muscle group that is essential for body balance and injury prevention. In short, the abduction machine should not be viewed as a minor or exclusively aesthetic exercise. It is a powerful tool for activating areas of the gluteus that are otherwise relegated. Incorporating it consciously and well executed can make the difference between visually round and firm glutes or ones that, despite other exercises, still do not reach that lateral and functional development that completes a good gluteal workout. The fourth exercise we are going to develop are the strides, also known as lunges. This is, without a doubt, one of the most versatile, demanding, and complete movements to work the lower body. Although at first glance it may seem a simple exercise, strides actually involve a large number of muscles, require coordination, balance, and, above all, a high level of activation of the gluteus maximus. From an anatomical point of view, strides primarily activate the gluteus maximus, hamstrings, and quadriceps. However, depending on the type of stride performed and how it is executed, the work can be focused on different muscles. For example, when taking a longer stride and leaning the torso slightly forward, the gluteus takes on a leading role. Conversely, if the step is shorter, the quadriceps tend to take more of the effort. One of the key benefits of strides is their unilateral nature. By working one leg at a time, muscle compensations are reduced and each side of the body is forced to develop in a balanced manner. This is especially important for correcting muscle imbalances, improving hip stability, and preventing injury. In addition, strides significantly improve hip mobility and neuromuscular coordination, aspects that often go unnoticed in more traditional training. There are many variations of strides, but two of the most effective for gluteal development are the stationary stride and the walking stride. In stationary strides, you take a long step forward and lower yourself vertically until both knees form an angle of approximately 90 degrees. The back knee should come close to the ground, without touching it, while the front knee should stay in line with the foot, without going over the toes. Here, the work concentrates on the front heel thrust, deeply activating the gluteus. On the other hand, walking strides add a dynamic component to the exercise. By moving forward step by step, muscle activation is increased, coordination is worked, and a more cumulative fatigue is generated, which intensifies the stimulus. This variation also improves hip mobility and muscular endurance, making it an excellent choice for both strength and conditioning. A common mistake when striding is to step too short. When this happens, the angle of the front leg is reduced, leading to quadriceps overload and decreased gluteal involvement. Another common mistake is losing hip stability or leaning the trunk improperly, which can lead to postural imbalance or lower back discomfort. It is therefore essential to maintain control of the body at all times, focusing on conscious execution and pushing off from the heel, not the toe. A very useful tip to enrich gluteal work is to incorporate lateral lunges. This variation completely changes the movement pattern, forcing you to work the gluteus medius, a muscle that is often neglected in traditional exercises. Lateral lunges strengthen the hip stabilizer muscles and improve gluteal range and firmness from a different plane, complementing the overall development. A curious fact is that strides, although today they are associated with weight training or functional work, have a much older origin. They were already used in military training in the 19th century as part of basic physical conditioning. Their simplicity and effectiveness have kept them in use to this day, adapting to all types of routines, from bodyweight training to advanced strength programs with heavy loads. In short, strides are not just another exercise in the routine. They are a powerful tool for sculpting strong, round, functional glutes while improving balance, mobility, and muscle symmetry. Integrating them correctly into a training program can make a real difference in lower body development. The fifth exercise we are going to develop is the squat, one of the fundamental bases of strength training and one of the most complete movements that exist for the development of the lower body. But in this case, we're going to focus on three key variations: the high bar squat, the low bar squat, and the front squat. Although at first glance they may appear similar, each has distinct biomechanical characteristics that directly influence which muscles are activated most intensely and how much the glute is worked. All squat variations intensely activate the gluteus maximus, quadriceps, and hamstrings, but the distribution of effort depends on how the load is placed and the angle of the torso during the movement. The goal, in any form, is to perform controlled flexion and extension of the hips and knees, always keeping the back neutral, the abdomen firm and the feet firmly planted on the floor, slightly wider than shoulder width apart. The high bar squat is the most common squat in gyms. In this variation, the bar rests on the upper trapezius, which forces the torso to remain more vertical during the movement. This vertical execution pattern generates greater quadriceps activation, although the gluteus also works hard, especially when breaking parallel and ascending from the lower position. This is a good option for those with good ankle mobility who are looking for a balanced stimulus throughout the leg. In the low bar squat, the bar is placed lower, over the posterior deltoid and upper back, which shifts the center of gravity slightly. This allows the torso to lean slightly more forward without losing postural control, which generates a greater angle of hip flexion and, therefore, a deeper stimulus on the gluteus maximus and hamstrings. This variation is widely used in strength programs because it allows higher loads to be handled, although it also requires a more precise technique and greater overall stability. The front squat, on the other hand, is clearly differentiated by the position of the load. The bar is held on the front of the body, over the shoulders and collarbones, forcing the torso to remain fully upright throughout the execution. This vertical pattern leads to a greater emphasis on the quadriceps, but does not leave out the gluteus. In fact, by keeping the trunk so upright and forcing knee flexion, significant activation is generated at the base of the gluteus, especially if the parallel is broken on each repetition. In addition, this variation significantly strengthens the core and improves postural stability, making it a very complete exercise. One of the most common mistakes in all squat variations is not breaking the parallel, i.e., not going low enough. By remaining in a shallow position, much of the stimulus on the gluteus is lost, which reaches its maximum activation when the hips descend below the knees. Another common mistake is poor bar placement, which can lead to neck discomfort, instability, and even poor overall execution of the movement. It is also common to see a lack of control in the eccentric phase of the movement, descending too quickly and without maintaining constant muscular tension. A very important professional advice is to choose the variant that best suits the mobility and anatomy of each person. Not all bodies move the same, and forcing a posture that you have not mastered can be counterproductive. For those with good ankle and hip mobility, the front squat can be excellent. For those looking to develop strength and work more glute and hamstring, the low bar squat may be more appropriate. And for a general stimulus, the high bar will always be a valid and functional option. A curious fact is that the squat, beyond the realm of fitness, has been part of human culture since ancient times. In many cultures, it was used as a resting posture, and in biomechanical terms, it is one of the most natural positions for the human body. However, with modern sedentary lifestyles, many people have lost the ability to perform a deep squat without compensations, which has turned this exercise into a real technical challenge. In conclusion, squats are a fundamental pillar in any serious training program. Their multiple variations allow the stimulus to be adapted to different objectives and physical conditions, and their ability to develop strength, hypertrophy, and postural control make them an irreplaceable tool for those seeking strong, functional, and well-defined glutes. The key is to master the technique, know the differences between each variation, and execute each repetition with intention and control. The sixth exercise we're going to develop is the Romanian deadlift, one of the most powerful and effective tools for working the gluteus maximus and hamstrings. Although deadlifts are often associated with an exercise for the back or simply for moving large weights, the Romanian deadlift, in particular, is designed to generate a deep stimulus in the posterior leg musculature, promoting both hypertrophy and strength in the glutes. From an anatomical point of view, this exercise focuses its impact on the gluteus maximus, hamstrings, and lumbar musculature, with an active role of the core at all times to stabilize the movement. Unlike the conventional deadlift, the Romanian keeps the knees in a semi-flexed position throughout, which radically changes the mechanics of the movement. Here, the action is not focused on lifting the load from the ground, but on bringing the hips back through a controlled hip hinge, stretching the posterior chain muscles while keeping the back straight and neutral. This stretching under load is precisely what makes the Romanian deadlift so powerful. During the downward phase of the movement, the gluteus and hamstrings lengthen while under tension, creating an ideal mechanical stimulus for muscle growth. This principle, known as eccentric stretching, has proven to be one of the most effective in inducing hypertrophy in the muscles involved. When coming back up, a hip extension is performed driven by the glutes, which must contract forcefully to complete the movement. The correct execution of the Romanian deadlift requires attention and precision. The movement should always be initiated from the hip, not from the back. The bar should be kept close to the body at all times, sliding along the legs as the hips project backwards. The back should remain straight, the chest slightly elevated, and the neck in a neutral position. At no time should there be a curvature of the spine, as this would shift the load to vulnerable areas such as the lumbar region, compromising the safety of the exercise. One of the most common mistakes is to bend the knees too much during the run. This turns the exercise into a sort of mix between conventional deadlift and squat, which decreases the stimulus on the hamstrings and glutes. Another common mistake is to round the back on the way down or lose control of the movement, which can lead to injury or inefficient execution. It is also common to go up too fast without taking advantage of eccentric control on the way down, thus losing a fundamental part of the stimulus. A very useful tip to get the most out of this exercise is to add a short pause at the bottom of the run. That pause, even if it is only a second or two, forces tension to be maintained under stretch and avoids the use of bounce or inertia on the way up. This small modification can make a big difference in muscle activation and in the quality of the work. Another important detail is that you do not need to reach the bar to the floor. The depth of the movement will depend on individual flexibility and mobility. In many cases, reaching just below the knees with good technique is more effective than trying to go lower at the expense of losing posture. A curious fact is that, in comparative studies on muscle activation, the Romanian deadlift has shown very high levels of activation in the gluteus maximus, even higher than those of many exercises considered specific for the gluteus, such as certain variations of legs or extensions. This shows that, although it may not appear to be an isolated exercise, its ability to recruit deep muscle fibers is remarkable. In summary, the Romanian deadlift is not only a key part of building strong and powerful glutes, but also an essential exercise for improving functionality, hip stability, and injury prevention. Executed with precision, it becomes an irreplaceable tool for those seeking solid and aesthetic development of the entire posterior chain. And there you have it, the 6 infallible exercises that will guarantee you firm, round, and powerful glutes in just 3 weeks, as long as you follow correct execution and progress with the right load. Remember that the key is not only to train hard, but to train smart, combining strength, activation, and range of motion exercises to maximize muscle growth. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these exercises do you already practice, and which one are you going to include in your routine starting today? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video and want more evidence-based content to improve your physique, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. That helps us a lot to keep creating quality information for you. See you in the next video. Let's train hard.